First contact. The lights dimmed across the bridge of the ECS Horizon as Admiral Lyra Kane studied the massive alien vessel through the main view screen. The ship hung against the backdrop of stars like an iridescent nautilus, its spiral design unlike anything humanity had encountered in their 50 years of space exploration. Status report, Lyra commanded, her voice steady despite the tension building in her chest. Commander Elias Rhodes, her XO for the past 7 years, looked up from his console. Their shields remain active but non-aggressive. No weapons signatures detected. They're just waiting. Lyra nodded. After 3 days of maintaining position at the edge of the Epsilon Eridani system, the standoff with the alien vessel had become almost routine. Almost. Any progress on communications? She asked. Dr. Maya Sorensen, the fleet's chief xenolinguist, shook her head. We've transmitted greetings in every format we know. They respond with the same sequence of harmonics each time. It's not random. There's structure there, but I can't decipher it yet. Lyra straightened her midnight blue uniform and made a decision. Prepare the diplomatic shuttle. I'm going over there. Rhodes stepped forward, alarm evident in his voice. Admiral, with all due respect. Noted and dismissed. Commander. Lyra cut him off with a practiced gesture. If they wanted us dead, we'd be space debris by now. Their technology clearly outmatches ours. We can either hide behind our shields until our supplies run low, or we can make contact. I didn't lead Earth's first deep space diplomatic mission to sit and wait. 30 minutes later, Lyra sat in the shuttle alongside Dr. Sorensen and a small security team. As they approached the alien vessel, an opening appeared, glowing with soft blue light. It seems we're invited in, Lyra murmured. The shuttle glided into a cavernous bay, settling onto a smooth pearl-like surface. Atmosphere readings came back normal, surprisingly breathable. Helmets on but visors up, Lyra ordered. First sign of trouble, visors down, retreat to the shuttle. The bay doors slid open to reveal 3 tall humanoid figures waiting for them. Their skin shimmered with a faint metallic luster in colors ranging from copper to deep violet. Their features were elegant, with large, luminous eyes that seemed to shift color like oil on water. Dr. Sorensen activated her universal translator and stepped forward, beginning the standard greeting protocol. The tallest alien tilted its head, listening, then let out a series of musical tones. The translator crackled and failed. Then, to everyone's shock, the alien spoke in perfect English. We have been studying your transmissions since you entered our territory. Your language is fascinating in its limitations. Lyra stepped forward. I am Admiral Lyra Kane of the Earth Coalition ship Horizon. We come in peace and friendship. All 3 aliens froze, their eyes fixed on Lyra, with an intensity that made her skin prickle. The tallest one stepped closer, towering nearly 2 feet above her. Its eyes shifted to a deep amethyst color as it studied her face. Impossible, it whispered, the word barely audible. The security team tensed, hands moving to their weapons. Lyra raised a hand, signaling them to stand down. Is there a problem? She asked calmly, though her heart hammered in her chest. The alien reached out a slender hand, stopping just short of touching her face. You wear the face of Alia, the Starsinger. I don't understand, Lyra replied. The second alien stepped forward. She was our greatest leader, lost to us centuries ago. Its voice was softer, almost reverent. And you are her mirror. This is merely convergent evolution, Dr. Sorensen interjected. Similar environments can produce similar physical traits across different species. The third alien, who had remained silent until now, spoke in a deeper voice. We are the Meridian Collective. I am Thalen, first voice of the Council. This is Naira, our chief harmonist, and Zev, our keeper of records. It gestured to the other 2 aliens, and we have waited for your return for a very long time. Lyra felt a strange sensation at the base of her skull, like a memory trying to surface. I think there's been a misunderstanding. This is humanity's first contact with your species. Zev, the one who had nearly touched her face, tilted its head. Perhaps, or perhaps there are currents in the universe that flow deeper than memory. Admiral, Dr. Sorensen whispered urgently. This could be a cultural opportunity. Many first contact scenarios involve religious or mythological interpretations. Lyra nodded slightly. She needed to tread carefully. We would be honored to learn more about your starcinder and your civilization. Then you will come with us to Meridia Prime, Thalen announced. Not a request, but a statement of fact. I'm afraid I can't leave my ship and crew, Lyra responded diplomatically. But I welcome representatives of your people to come aboard the Horizon for continued dialogue. The three Meridians communicated silently among themselves through subtle changes in the luminescence of their skin. Finally, Thalen spoke again. We will send a delegation. But know this, Admiral Lyra Kane. Your arrival was foretold in our oldest records. The one who wears Alia's face would return when the stars align. That time is now. As they returned to the shuttle, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that she'd been here before, said these words before. Something about the Meridian ship felt hauntingly familiar. Admiral, are you all right? Asked Lieutenant Chen, her head of security. Lyra blinked away the sensation. Yes, let's prepare for our guests. Back on the Horizon, Commander Rhodes awaited her report with barely contained anxiety. They called themselves the Meridian Collective, Lyra explained to her senior staff gathered in the conference room. Advanced, certainly peaceful so far, but there's a complication. Dr. Sorensen brought up an image on the main display, a reconstruction based on their encounter. They believe Admiral Kane resembles one of their historical or possibly mythological figures. How historical are we talking? Rhodes asked. They said centuries, Lyra replied. And they're sending a delegation to continue talks. Admiral Marcus Fraser, appearing via holographic link from Earth Command, frowned deeply. This doesn't sound like science, Admiral. It sounds like superstition. Are we certain these Meridians are approaching this first contact rationally? With respect, Admiral Fraser, we shouldn't dismiss their beliefs, Dr. Sorensen countered. Many advanced civilizations maintain spiritual or transcendent aspects to their cultures. Be that as it may, Fraser replied, your primary mission remains establishing diplomatic relations and assessing technological exchange possibilities, not fulfilling alien prophecies. The conversation was interrupted as the ship's AI announced the approach of a Meridian shuttle. Hours later, after the formal welcoming ceremony, Lyra found herself alone with Zev in the ship's arboretum, a space designed to remind the crew of Earth with its trees and flowing water features. Your people recreate nature within your vessels, Zev observed. So do we. Some connections are universal, Lyra replied, studying the alien's features. Up close, the resemblance to humans was more pronounced. 2 arms, 2 legs, a face with recognizable features, yet distinctly alien in the details. May I show you something, Admiral? Zev asked, producing a small crystalline object from within its robes. Lyra nodded cautiously. Zev held up the crystal, which projected a 3-dimensional image in the air between them. It showed another Meridian, but this one had markings that Lyra hadn't seen on the others, intricate patterns that swirled across its forehead and down its neck. This is Alia, as she was when she led our people, Zev explained. Lyra's breath caught. The face in the projection could have been her own, despite the alien features. The same high cheekbones, the same determined set of the jaw, even the way the head tilted slightly to one side. This is remarkable, Lyra admitted, but surely just a coincidence. For 5 centuries, we have waited for the Starsinger's return, Zev said softly. She disappeared during the Great Convergence, when our sun briefly aligned with 5 others. Her last words were a promise that she would return when next the stars aligned, to complete what she had begun. And you believe that's me, Lyra stated flatly. I believe nothing yet, Zev replied. But I hope. We all hope. As Zev spoke, Lyra felt a strange pressure building behind her eyes, a headache unlike any she'd experienced before. With it came flashes, images of a world with 3 moons, a vast city of spiraling towers, and a sense of profound loss. She swayed slightly, and Zev reached out to steady her. You felt something just now, the alien said, not a question but a certainty. Just a headache, Lyra lied, pulling away. I should check in with my crew. Zev nodded, but its eyes had changed to a deep, knowing blue. The resonance has already begun, Admiral. You may deny it, but your spirit remembers what your mind cannot. That night, Lyra dreamed of flying through space without a ship, her body wrapped in starlight, singing the song that moved planets in their orbits. She woke gasping, the melody still echoing in her mind. Something was happening to her, something connected to these aliens who looked at her with such hope and expectation. And deep down, in a place she hadn't known existed within her, something was beginning to answer. Ancient memories. You haven't been sleeping. Commander Rhodes leaned against the doorframe of Lyra's quarters, concern etched on his face. Lyra looked up from the reports scattered across her desk. Is that your professional medical opinion, or just an observation? Both. Dr. Chen says you haven't reported for your scheduled checkup, and the ship's logs show you've been accessing historical databases at 300 hours for the past 3 nights. She sighed, rubbing her temples. The headaches had been getting worse. I'm fine, Elias. Just trying to understand our new friends. Find anything interesting? Lyra hesitated. How could she explain the dreams? The visions of a world she'd never seen, a life she'd never lived. Nothing concrete, she finally said. Their technology is at least a century beyond ours. Their social structure appears to be consensus-based, not hierarchical. And they're very interested in me for reasons I can't fully explain. Rhodes stepped into the room, letting the door close behind him. In the 7 years they'd served together, he'd learned to read her better than anyone. This is more than diplomatic curiosity, isn't it? He asked quietly. Before she could answer, her comm unit chimed. Admiral, the Meridian delegation is requesting your presence in Science Lab 3. Lieutenant Chen's voice announced. On my way, Lyra replied, grateful for the interruption. As she stood, she caught Rhodes watching her with narrowed eyes. Just be careful, he said. These aliens might look at you and see what they want to see, not who you really are. Lyra nodded. I know who I am, Elias. But as she spoke the words, she wasn't entirely sure they were true anymore. In Science Lab 3, Dr. Sorensen stood with Thalen and Naira, the Meridian delegates, surrounding a strange device they had brought aboard. A circular platform about 2 meters in diameter, lined with swirling patterns that glowed with a soft blue light. Admiral, Dr. Sorensen greeted her, excitement evident in her voice. The Meridians have offered to demonstrate their memory resonance technology. It's fascinating. They believe memories can be stored not just in neural tissue, but in the quantum structure of matter itself. Memories in matter? Lyra asked skeptically. Naira stepped forward, her skin shifting to a calm green hue. All things remember, Admiral. Stars remember their birth in the cosmic fires. Planets remember the touch of meteors. And beings like us. She gestured between them. We remember lives beyond our own. You're talking about reincarnation, Lyra said flatly. We speak of continuity, Thalen corrected. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. The same is true of consciousness. Dr. Sorensen could barely contain her excitement. They've offered to let us experience the technology firsthand. With your permission, Admiral. Lyra studied the device warily. What exactly does it do? It amplifies resonances, Naira explained. Echoes of past experiences that linger in the quantum field that permeates all living tissue. And you want me to, what? Step onto this platform. Only if you wish to know the truth, Thalen said solemnly. Every instinct told Lyra to refuse, to maintain the professional distance of a diplomat. But the dreams, the headaches, the strange sense of familiarity. She needed answers. I'll do it, she decided. Admiral. Lieutenant Chen stepped forward. Protocol requires. I know the protocols. Lyra cut him off. And I'm overriding them. Dr. Sorensen will observe and record. Commander Rhodes will be notified if anything goes wrong. She stepped onto the platform, feeling a slight vibration through the soles of her boots. Naira moved to a control panel and adjusted several crystalline components. Relax your mind, the alien instructed. Allow the memories to surface naturally. The blue light intensified, spiraling up around Lyra's body. She felt a tingling sensation across her skin, then a warmth that seemed to penetrate to her bones. And then she was falling. She stood on a balcony overlooking a vast city of spiraling towers, 3 moons hanging in the violet sky above. Her hands, not human hands, but meridian, rested on a railing made of some pearlescent material. First voice Alea. A voice called from behind her. The council awaits your decision. She turned, feeling the weight of ceremonial robes across her shoulders. Tell them I will be there shortly, Zev. Zev. The same Zev. But this felt like centuries ago. The alignment approaches, Zev continued. If we are to attempt the great working, we must begin preparations now. She nodded, feeling a profound sense of purpose. It is time. The song has been composed, the harmonics calculated. We will bring the Ancient Ones back from across the void. The vision shifted abruptly. Now she stood before a massive device, similar to the platform but enormous, filling an underground chamber. Hundreds of meridians surrounded it, their voices raised in a harmonic chant that made the very air vibrate. The calculations are precise, she heard herself say. When the 6 stars align, the gateway will open, and our lost brothers and sisters will return. But something was wrong. The harmonics were shifting, the resonance patterns destabilizing. First voice. Zev cried out in alarm. The field is collapsing. She rushed forward, placing her hands on the central console. I can stabilize it, continued the sequence. Light erupted around her, blinding, burning. Lyra gasped as she returned to herself, nearly collapsing on the platform. Dr. Sorensen rushed forward to steady her. Admiral, are you all right? Lyra's head pounded, her vision swimming. But the memories, if that's what they were, remained crystal clear. What did you do to me? She demanded, looking at Thalen and Naira. We did nothing. Thalen replied calmly. The resonance merely revealed what was already within you. Naira stepped closer, her eyes now a deep, penetrating violet. You saw it, didn't you? Meridia Prime. The great working. Your life as Alia. That wasn't me, Lyra insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. Then how did you know details of our world that we have not shared? Thalen challenged. The 3 moons, the architecture of the capital city. These are not things we have disclosed. Lyra had no answer for that. We should run some tests. Dr. Sorensen suggested, her scientific curiosity overriding her concern. Brain activity, cellular response. No more tests, Lyra said firmly, stepping off the platform. Not today. As she walked from the lab, she could feel the meridians watching her. Not with malice or even curiosity, but with something far more unsettling, recognition. Back in her quarters, Lyra found Rhodes waiting for her. You used unknown alien technology without proper safety protocols, he said without preamble. Do you have any idea how many regulations you just violated? Probably all of them, Lyra admitted, sinking into a chair. Her head was still pounding. Rhodes's anger faded as he took in her appearance. What happened in there? I saw. I remembered. She struggled to find the words. Elias, what if they're right? What if I am somehow connected to their lost leader? "That's not possible," he said firmly. "You were born on Earth. You have parents, a brother. I've met them." "I know, but—" Her comm unit chimed again. "Admiral," the ship's AI announced, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Fraser. Priority Alpha." Lyra straightened, composing herself. "Put him through." Admiral Fraser's holographic image appeared, his expression grave. "Admiral Kane, I've reviewed Dr. Sorensen's reports. Earth Command is concerned about the direction of these first contact proceedings. Sir, I assure you, you've allowed yourself to become personally involved in what should be a strictly diplomatic mission." Fraser interrupted. "These aliens have some kind of religious fixation on you, and instead of maintaining professional distance, you're encouraging it." "That's not fair, sir," Lyra protested. "I'm trying to understand their culture to facilitate meaningful dialogue. By submitting to experiments with unvetted alien technology." Fraser's voice rose slightly. "We're sending the ECS Intrepid to your location. Captain Rivera will take over diplomatic duties while you return to Earth for debriefing." "With all due respect, Admiral, removing me from these negotiations now could damage our relationship with the Meridians." Fraser's expression hardened. "That's exactly what concerns us. Admiral, your primary loyalty should be to Earth and its interests, not to aliens who claim you're their reincarnated messiah." After the transmission ended, Lyra sat in stunned silence. Rhodes watched her carefully. "They're making a mistake," she finally said. "Are they?" Rhodes asked gently. "Lyra, something is happening to you. Something we don't understand. Maybe some distance would help." She shook her head. "There's more here than we're seeing, Elias. The Meridians came looking for us, specifically. They were waiting at the edge of an uninhabited system." "Why?" Before Rhodes could answer, the ship's alarm blared. "Proximity alert," the AI announced. "Unknown vessel approaching at high velocity." "That can't be the Intrepid already," Rhodes said, moving toward the door. Lyra followed him to the bridge, where the main view screen showed a ship unlike either Earth or Meridian design. Angular, predatory, its hull a dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Status report," Lyra commanded, sliding into her chair. The vessel appeared suddenly. "Admiral," the tactical officer replied. "No warp signature, no indication of conventional propulsion. It's just there." "The Meridian ship is powering weapons," another officer reported. "Hail both vessels," Lyra ordered. The communications officer worked his console. "The unknown ship isn't responding. The Meridians are coming through now." Felon's face appeared on screen, his skin now a dark, alarmed red. "Admiral Kane, you must raise your shields immediately. The Voidborn have found us." "The who?" Lyra asked. "An enemy we believe defeated centuries ago," Phelan explained urgently. "They must have detected the resonance activation." "Admiral," the tactical officer called out, "the unknown vessel is scanning us." "Wait, they're targeting." A brilliant beam of energy lanced out from the dark ship, striking the horizon's port side. The ship shuddered violently. "Shields at 40%, the tactical officer shouted. "One hit, that's impossible." "Return fire," Lyra ordered. "All batteries." The horizon's weapons seemed to have minimal effect on the dark vessel. Meanwhile, the Meridian ship moved to intercept, its own weapons flaring. "Admiral," Phelan said urgently, "you must come aboard our vessel. You are the key. If the Voidborn capture you." Another blast rocked the ship. "Hull breach on Deck 7, an officer reported. "Emergency force fields engage." Rhodes looked at Lyra. "Whatever's happening, they're after you." She nodded grimly. "Prepare a shuttle. I'm going to the Meridian ship." "Lyra." "That's an order, Commander. You'll take command of the horizon and fall back to Earth space. I'll go with the Meridians and draw this enemy away." As the dark ship fired again, Lyra knew she was making the right choice. Though whether it was Admiral Kane or Alia the Starsender who made it, she could no longer be certain. The conspiracy. The Meridian ship surged into faster-than-light travel, the stars stretching into luminous streaks outside the viewports. Lyra stood in what they called the Harmony Chamber, a circular room at the heart of the vessel where crystalline structures grew from floor to ceiling, pulsing with inner light. "The Voidborn should not have found us," Nyra said, her skin fluctuating between anxious yellow and thoughtful blue. "Something has changed." "You mentioned them before. The Voidborn," Lyra said. "Who are they exactly?" Felin joined them, his movements fluid despite the gravity shifts as the ship accelerated. "They are what remain of our ancient enemies, the Discordants. We believe them banished from our reality during the Great Working. The same Great Working I, or Alia, was involved in?" Lyra asked. Zev, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "Not just involved. You were its architect. The Great Working was meant to save our species from extinction by opening a pathway to our ancestral dimension. But something went wrong," Lyra murmured, the memory surfacing unbidden. The harmonics destabilized. The three Meridians exchanged glances. "Yes," Thalen confirmed. "Instead of bringing our ancestors home, it created a rift that allowed the Voidborn to enter our reality. Alia sacrificed herself to seal the breach, but some Voidborn remained trapped on our side." Lyra paced the chamber, trying to process everything. "And now they're after me. Why? Revenge." "Because you are the key to completing the Great Working," Nyra explained. "Only the one who began it can finish it properly. The Voidborn fear this. They have built a presence in our universe, and do not wish to be banished." A melodic tone filled the chamber, and a holographic display materialized in the center. It showed the horizon safely retreating toward Earth space, the dark vessel not pursuing. "Your ship is safe," Thalen observed. "As I suspected, you were their target. Where are we going now?" Lyra asked. "Meridia Prime," Zev replied. "Our homeworld. There we can protect you while preparations are made for the completion of the Great Working." "And if I don't want to complete it?" Lyra challenged. "If I'm not convinced I'm your reincarnated leader." Thalen tilted his head. "The stars align in 27 Earth days. Without your participation, the rift will widen naturally, allowing more Voidborn to enter. Your people would be in danger as well as ours." Lyra felt trapped, caught between her duty as an Earth Fleet Admiral and the growing certainty that the Meridians were telling the truth about her connection to Alia. "I need to contact my superiors," she said firmly. "We will provide communication once we are safely within Meridian space," Thalen promised. "But you should know, there are those among your people who already understand what is happening." "What do you mean?" Zev produced a small device that projected another hologram, this one showing Admiral Fraser in conversation with a shadowy figure whose features were deliberately obscured. "Where did you get this?" Lyra demanded. "We have been observing Earth for decades," Zev admitted. "Ever since our calculations indicated you would be born there." In the recording, Fraser's voice came through clearly. "The Meridians must not be allowed to reclaim her. The technology they're offering in exchange for our cooperation is worth 10 times what they'd share through official channels." The shadowy figure replied. "And if Kane discovers the truth, then we'll deal with her as necessary," Fraser answered coldly. The recording ended, leaving Lyra stunned. "This could be fabricated," she said, but the denial sounded hollow even to her own ears. "It is authentic," Thalen assured her. "There is a faction within your Earth government that has known about the Meridian Earth connection for years. They have been trading secretly with the Voidborn, exchanging human genetic material for technology." "Human genetic material," Lyra repeated, horror dawning. "For what purpose?" "The Voidborn cannot maintain physical form in our dimension without borrowing compatible genetic patterns," Nyra explained. "Human DNA is remarkably adaptable." Lyra felt sick. If this was true, it meant Earth, or at least elements within its government, had been collaborating with these Voidborn, possibly for years. "I need proof," she insisted. "Something more than a convenient recording." Zev approached her, holding out a hand. "There is a way, but it requires trust." Lyra hesitated. The last time she'd trusted the Meridian's technology, she'd experienced memories that couldn't possibly be hers. And yet, those memories had felt real. More real than anything in her life. "What do you propose?" she finally asked. "A deeper resonance," Zev explained. "Not just with Alia's memories, but with the quantum signature of the Great Working itself. It still exists, echoing throughout spacetime. And this will prove whether Earth is involved with the Voidborn. It will reveal all truths," Zev promised, "including the truth of who you are." Before Lyra could decide, alarms blared throughout the ship. The holographic display shifted to show another dark vessel approaching rapidly. "How did they find us in warp?" Thalen demanded of no one in particular. "They must have placed a quantum tracer on Admiral Kane," Nyra suggested, her skin paling to an alarmed white. "On me." Lyra instinctively checked her uniform, her equipment. Zev moved closer, producing a small scanning device. It emitted a soft tone as it passed over Lyra's right forearm. "There," he said grimly. "Embedded in your tissue. Recently placed." Lyra's mind raced. The only recent medical procedure she'd undergone was the standard inoculation before the mission. Admiral Fraser insisted on a new protocol. The implications were staggering. If Fraser had arranged for a tracker to be placed in her, it meant Earth's corruption went to the highest levels. "Remove it," she ordered. Moments later, a small, nearly microscopic device lay in a containment field, its surface writhing with what looked like tiny black tendrils. "Voidborn technology," Thalen confirmed. "Put it in a probe," Lyra suggested. "Launch it in the opposite direction. Buy us some time." Nyra nodded in approval. A warrior's strategy. As the Meridians carried out her plan, Lyra watched the enemy ship change course to follow the decoy. For the moment, they were safe. But her world had been turned upside down. Earth, or at least some powerful faction within it, had betrayed her. The Meridians claimed she was their reincarnated leader. And now they were headed to their homeworld, where she would apparently be expected to complete some ancient, potentially dangerous ritual. "I'll participate in the deeper resonance," she decided. "I need to know the truth. All of it." The resonance chamber was different from the platform on the horizon. Smaller, more intimate. As Lyra lay back on a reclined seat that seemed to mold itself to her body, she felt both terrified and strangely at peace. "The process is more intense than what you experienced before," Zev warned her. "You will not merely see memories, you will live them." "I understand," Lyra said, though she couldn't possibly. Nyra placed crystalline nodes at key points on Lyra's body. Temples, throat, heart, palms. "These will help channel the resonance energy." Will I still be me afterward?" Lyra asked, voicing her deepest fear. "You will be more yourself than you have ever been," Thalen assured her. The crystals began to glow, and Lyra felt herself sinking, not into unconsciousness, but into a deeper state of awareness. The chamber around her faded. She was Alia, first voice of the Meridian Collective, standing before the Great Council 500 years ago. "The calculations are precise," she insisted, her voice carrying the harmonics that marked her as a true starsenger. "When the 6 stars align, we can open the way home." An elder counselor rose in opposition. "The risk is too great," first voice. "If the harmonics fail, the breach could allow the discordance through instead." "The discordants are a myth," another counselor argued. "Tales to frighten children. They are real," Alia countered. "I have seen evidence in the ancient records. But the harmonics will not fail. I have spent a lifetime perfecting them." The scene shifted. Now she stood before the Great Working, the massive device humming with power as the alignment of the 6 stars reached its zenith. The harmonic choir raised their voices, creating complex patterns of sound that resonated with the very fabric of reality. But as the rift began to open, Aliyah sensed something wrong. The harmonics were perfect, but something else was interfering, a discordant note that shouldn't be there. Treachery, she realized aloud. Someone had deliberately sabotaged the working. As the rift widened, instead of the golden light of their ancestral home, a terrible darkness began to pour through. Beings of shadow and malice, the Voidborn. Close it, she commanded, but it was too late. The breach was unstable, growing. With no other choice, Aliyah stepped into the center of the device. Continue the harmonics, she ordered as she placed her hands on the core crystal. Using her own life force, her own pattern, she stabilized the breach long enough to push most of the Voidborn back. But the effort consumed her entirely. As her consciousness faded, she made a promise. I will return when the stars align again. I will complete what was begun. The scene shifted once more, but now to something unexpected. Earth, 29 years ago. Scientists in a classified facility worked around a strange device, unmistakably a Voidborn design. A pregnant woman laid on an examination table, monitors showing both her vital signs and those of her unborn child. The genetic modifications are taking hold, one scientist reported. The fetus is accepting the meridian markers. Admiral Fraser, younger but unmistakable, watched from behind glass. And she won't remember any of this. No, sir. As far as Catherine Kane will know, she had a normal pregnancy and delivered a normal baby girl. Good. The Voidborn have upheld their end. This child will be our key to unlocking their technology. The unborn child in the woman's womb was Lyra, but she had never been fully human. She had been engineered, a vessel prepared to receive Aliyah's returning consciousness. The resonance ended, and Lyra gasped as she returned to herself. Tears streamed down her face as the full truth crashed over her. My whole life, she whispered. My entire existence. It was all planned. Zev helped her sit up. Not all of it. The choices you made, the person you became, that was still you. But I was created to be a vessel for Aliyah, Lyra said bitterly. No, Thelen corrected. You are Aliyah, reborn as promised. The humans and the Voidborn both tried to use this truth for their own purposes, but they do not understand the true nature of consciousness. Naira placed a gentle hand on Lyra's shoulder. You are not a vessel containing two separate beings. You are one soul that has lived two lives, carrying the wisdom of both. As the Meridian ship approached their homeworld, Lyra stood at the viewport, watching the 3 moons of Meridia Prime come into view. The planet below was breathtaking. Vast oceans of deep purple landmasses covered in silver-leafed forests, and sprawling cities that seemed to grow organically from the landscape rather than being built upon it. It's exactly as I remember, she whispered, then caught herself. Were these her memories or Aliyah's? Did the distinction even matter anymore? We will arrive at the capital city in moments, Thelen announced, joining her at the viewport. The High Council awaits. And what will you tell them? Lyra asked. That I'm your lost leader, returned. That Earth has been conspiring with your ancient enemy. We will tell them the truth, Thelen replied simply. What happens next will depend on your choice. Lyra turned to face him. My choice. You make it sound like I have options. You always have options, Admiral. That is what makes you who you are, in this life and the last. As the ship descended toward the capital city, Lyra made her decision. She was still an Earth Fleet admiral with a duty to protect humanity, but now she understood the larger threat. If the Voidborn succeeded in fully entering this dimension, both Earth and Meridia would suffer. The ship settled onto a landing platform extending from one of the city's tallest spires. Through the viewport, Lyra could see a delegation waiting. Meridians in elaborate ceremonial attire, their skin shifting in patterns of anticipation and awe. They're expecting Aliyah, Lyra observed. They're expecting you, Zev corrected, joining them. However you choose to present yourself. Lyra straightened her Earth Fleet uniform. Then they'll meet Admiral Lyra Kane, who happens to remember being Alia the Starsinger. The Awakening. The Meridian High Council chamber was a vast, circular space with walls of living crystal that hummed with subtle harmonics. 12 council members sat on elevated seats arranged in a semicircle, their skin displaying formal patterns of deep blue and gold. Light filtered in through translucent panels overhead, casting prismatic patterns across the floor. Lyra stood at the center, aware of the hundreds of Meridian eyes watching her from the gallery above. The whispers were audible, some awed, some skeptical, all curious about this human who wore their lost leader's face. Counselors of Meridia. Phelan began formally. I present Admiral Lyra Kane of Earth, in whom the spirit of First Voice Alia has returned. The chief counselor, an elderly Meridian whose skin had faded to a pale silver, leaned forward. Is this true, human? Do you claim to be our lost Starsinger? Lyra took a steadying breath. I don't claim anything. But I have memories, memories of this world, of the great working, of its failure. Whether I am Alia reborn or simply connected to her somehow, I cannot say with certainty. A murmur rippled through the chamber. And yet, another counselor interjected. You wear her face. You know things no outsider could know. I know that the stars will align again in 24 days. Lyra replied. I know that when they do, the rift will naturally widen, allowing more Voidborn to enter this reality. And I know that elements within Earth's government have been collaborating with these Voidborn, unaware of the true danger they represent. The chief counselor's skin darkened with concern. These are grave accusations against your own people. Yes, Lyra acknowledged, and I take no pleasure in making them. But I've seen the evidence in the resonance. Admiral Fraser and others have been trading with the Voidborn for decades. Human genetic material in exchange for technology. If this is true, a third counselor spoke, then humanity poses as great a threat as the Voidborn themselves. No, Lyra said firmly. Most humans know nothing of this. They are as much victims as potential allies. I believe we must work together, Meridians and humans, to close the rift permanently. The council chamber erupted in overlapping conversations, Meridian skin patterns flashing with emotions ranging from outrage to hope. The chief counselor raised a hand, and silence gradually returned. And how do you propose we do this? He asked. The great working failed once before. It didn't fail, Lyra corrected. It was sabotage. She turned to the resonance recorder that Zev had brought into the chamber. With your permission, I will share what I experienced in the deep resonance. After the council viewed the recorded memories, both of Alia's final moments 5 centuries ago and the revelation of Lyra's engineered birth, a heavy silence fell over the chamber. You were created by your own people to be used as a tool, the chief counselor finally said, his voice soft with compassion. Yes, Lyra acknowledged. But that doesn't change who I am or what I choose to do now. And what do you choose, Admiral Kane? He asked. Lyra stood taller, her resolve strengthening. I choose to complete what Alia began, to properly close the rift, once and for all. But I'll need help from both Meridians and humans who aren't compromised by the Voidborn. Is that possible? A counselor asked skeptically. How can we know which humans to trust? I know who we can trust, Lyra assured them. My ship, my crew. Commander Rhodes would never. A disturbance at the entrance to the chamber interrupted her. A Meridian messenger rushed in, skin flashing with urgent patterns. Forgive the interruption, the messenger announced, but we've detected multiple vessels entering our system. One is Voidborn, but the others, they are Earth vessels. Anxiety rippled through the chamber. Which Earth vessels? Lyra demanded. The ECS Intrepid leads them, the messenger replied. They are demanding your immediate return. The ship Fraser had mentioned, the one sent to replace her. How many Voidborn ships? Thalen asked. Just one, but it's massive, larger than any we've encountered before. Lyra's mind raced. They're working together, she realized aloud. The corrupted Earth faction and the Voidborn. They've come for me, to prevent the completion of the Great Working. We must prepare for battle, the military counselor declared. No, Lyra interjected. If we fire on Earth ships, it will start a war between our peoples, exactly what the Voidborn want. We need time. Time for what? The chief counselor asked. To complete the Great Working now, Lyra said firmly. The alignment isn't perfect yet, but it's close enough. With the right harmonics, I believe we can seal the rift before they can stop us. That's impossible, an elder counselor protested. The preparations alone take days, and the full alignment is still. We don't have days. Lyra cut in. And I know the harmonics. They're still here. She touched her temple. Perfect and complete. The council erupted in debate again. While they argued, Naira approached Lyra privately. What you're suggesting is dangerous, she warned. Attempting the working before full alignment could destroy you. If we wait, they'll stop us, Lyra replied. This might be our only chance. The chief counselor finally raised his hand for silence. The decision is not ours to make. If you are truly a Leo returned, then the Great Working is your responsibility, your burden to bear. Lyra nodded gratefully. Then we must begin immediately. I'll need your best harmonics core and access to the original working chamber. But what of the Earth ships? A counselor asked. They will be here within hours. I will speak with them, Lyra decided. Stall them. Perhaps I can reach Commander Rhodes, make him understand what's happening. As the council session ended, Lyra found herself in rapid preparation for two critical tasks: diplomatic communication with the approaching Earth fleet and the premature completion of the Great Working that had failed centuries before. In a communication chamber, she composed a message to the horizon, which was now part of the approaching Earth fleet. Commander Rhodes, this is Admiral Kane. What you've been told about my situation is not accurate. I am here willingly, working to neutralize a threat to both Earth and Meridia. The Voidborn ship accompanying you is not an ally. I repeat, the Voidborn are hostile to both our species. She paused, wondering how much more to reveal. In the end, she opted for truth. Elias, I've discovered that Admiral Fraser and others have been secretly collaborating with the Voidborn for decades. I have proof. Whatever orders you've been given, please delay any hostile action until we can speak directly. Lives on both worlds depend on it. After sending the message, Lyra was escorted to another part of the city, deep beneath the surface, where the original Great Working Chamber had been preserved as both memorial and museum. The chamber was enormous, a perfect sphere hollowed from the living rock. At its center stood the device she remembered from Olia's memories, a complex arrangement of crystals and resonating metals designed to focus harmonic energy with unprecedented precision. It has been maintained, but not used, since Olia's time, Zev explained as they entered. Few even remember its true purpose. Meridian technicians and resonance specialists were already at work, bringing ancient systems online, calibrating instruments that hadn't been used in 5 centuries. The harmonic choir is assembling, Thalen informed her. 30 of our finest singers. Lyra approached the central platform, the spot where Alia had sacrificed herself. Up close, the technology was both familiar and strange. Her hands moved across the controls with muscle memory that wasn't hers, yet somehow was. This will work, she murmured, more to herself than to Thalen or Zev. A technician approached hesitantly. First voice, Admiral. We've detected an anomaly in the resonance field. There appears to be interference. Lyra frowned. Show me. On a display panel, mathematical representations of sound waves rippled and distorted. Lyra studied them, understanding flowing through her from memories she hadn't lived. The Voidborn are already attempting to counteract us, she realized. They've established a counter-resonance. Can we overcome it? Thalen asked. Lyra studied the patterns more closely. then nodded slowly. Yes, but it will require more power and a direct connection. What kind of direct connection? Zev asked, concern evident in his voice. Lyra gestured to her own body. Me. I'll need to physically connect to the resonance core. That's what killed Aliyah. Zev protested. No, Lyra corrected. What killed Aliyah was trying to force the rift closed from outside. I need to enter the resonance field completely. Become part of it. Naira, who had just entered the chamber, stepped forward. Such a connection would change you. If you survive, you may not be human anymore. I'm already not entirely human. Lyra replied with a small, sad smile. I never was. Before they could discuss further, an alarm sounded. On a nearby monitor, Lyra saw the Earth fleet had entered orbit around Meridia Prime. The Voidborn ship hung behind them, massive and dark against the stars. A communication came through. Commander Rhodes's face appeared on screen. Admiral Kane, he said formally, his expression giving nothing away. I've received your message. Admiral Fraser has ordered me to extract you from Meridia Prime immediately. He claims you've been compromised by alien influence. And what do you believe, Elias? Lyra asked. Rhodes's professional facade cracked slightly. I believe something very strange is happening, and I'd like to hear your side directly. But I can't disobey a direct order without cause. I understand, Lyra said. All I ask is that you delay any hostile action for 2 hours. That's all I need. Rhodes hesitated, then nodded almost imperceptibly. The diplomatic protocols require us to attempt negotiation for at least that long. But be aware, the Intrepid is prepared to deploy ground forces if necessary. Thank you, Commander, Lyra said, hoping he could read the sincerity in her eyes. After the communication ended, she turned to the Meridian team. We have 2 hours. Let's make them count. The preparations accelerated. The harmonic choir took their positions in alcoves surrounding the chamber. Lyra changed from her Earth Fleet uniform into a Meridian ceremonial robe, not because tradition demanded it, but because the material was embedded with resonance-enhancing elements. As technicians made final adjustments to the working device, Lyra stood at its center, mentally reviewing the complex harmonics she would need to generate. The alignment is at 92%, a technician reported. Not ideal, but within operational parameters. The Earth fleet is holding position, another announced. But they've launched shuttles. Ground forces, as threatened. How long until they reach the city? Thalen asked. Approximately 90 minutes. Lyra nodded. Then we have just enough time. Zev approached her one last time. Are you certain about this? Once the process begins. I'm certain, Lyra affirmed. This is why I exist, why Aliyah was reborn as me. To finish what was started. Then may the harmony guide you, Zeb said, stepping back. The choir began to sing, their voices creating complex mathematical patterns in the air. Lyra could see the harmonics now, not just hear them, but see them as visible waves of energy that rippled through the chamber. She placed her hands on the resonance core. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, light began to flow up her arms, not external light, but a luminescence that came from within, as if her very cells were beginning to vibrate in harmony with the working. The sensation was extraordinary, painful yet exhilarating. She felt her consciousness expanding, reaching outward beyond the confines of her physical form. And then she saw it, the rift. Not with her eyes, but with some new sense that transcended normal perception. It was a tear in reality itself, a wound in the fabric of space-time that pulsed with dark energy. Around its edges, she could sense the Voidborn pressing inward, seeking entry. With newfound clarity, she understood what needed to be done. The original harmonics had been correct, but incomplete. Aliyah hadn't known about the counter-resonance the Voidborn could generate, but Lyra did. She began to sing, her voice joining the choir, but following a different pattern, one that incorporated the Voidborn's own dissonance, turning it back upon itself. The light flowing through her body intensified, becoming almost blinding. The pain increased as well, as her physical form struggled to channel energies it was never designed to contain. In orbit above, the Voidborn ship detected what was happening. It broke formation with the Earth fleet and moved toward the planet's surface, weapons charging. In the working chamber, alarms sounded. "The Voidborn ship is attacking," a technician shouted. "They're targeting this location." Lyra barely heard them. She was too deeply connected to the resonance now. Her consciousness expanded to encompass both the rift and the working. She could feel the Voidborn's panic as they realized what she was doing, using their own counter-resonance against them, creating a harmonic loop that was forcing the rift close. On the planetary surface, Commander Rhodes led a team of Earth Marines toward the city center, following coordinates that supposedly marked Admiral Kane's location. But something felt wrong about the mission. Fraser's orders had been too emphatic, too desperate. When they encountered Meridian security forces, Rhodes made a split-second decision. "Hold your fire," he ordered his team. "We're here to talk, not fight." The Meridian captain seemed surprised but lowered his weapon. "Your Admiral Kane is trying to save both our worlds," he said. "But there isn't much time." Rhodes nodded. "Take me to her." In the working chamber, the resonance had reached critical intensity. Lyra's physical form was now barely visible within a column of pure harmonic energy. The rift was closing, the Voidborn being pushed back into their own dimension. But above, the Voidborn ship had locked weapons on the city. Rhodes burst into the chamber just as the first blast hit somewhere nearby, shaking the foundations of the building. "What's happening to her?" he demanded, seeing Lyra's form engulfed in light. "She is becoming one with the harmonics," Zev explained. "The only way to close the rift permanently." Another blast, closer this time. The chamber shuddered, dust falling from the ceiling. "The shields won't hold much longer," a technician warned. Within the resonance field, Lyra was barely holding onto her human consciousness. The expansion was overwhelming, her mind stretching to encompass concepts and dimensions she had never imagined. But at the core of this vast new awareness, she maintained a singular focus, closing the rift. With one final surge of harmonic energy, she pushed. The rift collapsed in on itself, the edges sealing with a flash of light that was felt rather than seen. In orbit, the Voidborn ship suddenly went dark, its connection to the others of its kind severed. Without direction, it began to dissolve, its matter returning to its native dimension. In the working chamber, the column of light surrounding Lyra pulsed once, twice, then collapsed inward with a thunderous crash. Where Lyra had stood, there was now only empty space. "No," Rhodes rushed forward, but Thalen held him back. "Wait," the Meridian said. The air in the center of the platform began to shimmer, coalescing into a form that was neither fully human nor Meridian, but something in between. Lyra, or what Lyra had become, opened eyes that now shimmered with inner light. "It's done," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air vibrate. "The rift is closed. The Voidborn can never return." Part 5. Two Worlds United. 3 months later, Commander, now Captain, Elias Rhodes stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned ECS Harmony, the first joint Earth-Meridian vessel. Through the viewport, he watched as shuttles carried personnel and supplies between the ship and Meridia Prime below. So much had changed so quickly. The exposure of Admiral Fraser's conspiracy had sent shockwaves through Earth Command. Trials were still ongoing, with more collaborators being identified each week. The technology the conspirators had acquired from the Voidborn was being carefully studied. Too valuable to discard, too dangerous to use carelessly. The door to the observation deck slid open, and Rhodes turned to see a figure enter, neither fully human nor Meridian, but something gloriously in between. Lyra's physical form had stabilized after the working, but she remained transformed. Her skin now held a subtle luminescence, shifting slightly with her emotions like a Meridian's. Her eyes, once dark brown, now shimmered with an inner light. "Captain," she greeted him with a smile. "The new quantum drives are performing beyond expectations. We'll be ready for the maiden voyage tomorrow." "Admiral," he replied formally, then relaxed. "Or should I call you First Voice now?" Lyra laughed, the sound carrying harmonics that made the air vibrate pleasantly. "I hold both titles now, as befits someone of my unique situation." After the great working, many had expected Lyra to remain on Meridia Prime, to take up Aaliyah's former position as leader of their people. Instead, she had proposed something unprecedented, a formal alliance between Earth and Meridia, with herself as primary liaison. "Are you ready to address the crew?" Rhodes asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, a hint of the old Lyra showing through the new exterior. They walked together to the ship's main assembly area, where the combined crew of humans and Meridians waited. As they entered, all rose to attention, a gesture of respect that transcended species. Lyra took her place at the podium, looking out at the faces before her, some human, some alien, all now united in common purpose. 3 months ago, she began, our world stood on the brink of conflict, manipulated by forces that sought to divide us for their own gain. Today, we stand together as partners, as friends, and I hope, as family. She paused, letting her gaze move across the assembled crew. The ECS Harmony represents more than just a technological achievement. It symbolizes what is possible when different species recognize that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. The humans among you bring adaptability, creativity, and determination. The Meridians bring harmony, ancient wisdom, and perspective. Together, we are greater than the sum of our parts. As she spoke, Rhodes noticed how both humans and Meridians listened with equal attention. There was something about Lyra now that transcended species. She was a bridge between worlds in the most literal sense. "Our mission is to explore, to learn, and to build connections," she continued, "but also to ensure that what happened with the Voidborn never happens again. There are other rifts in our universe, other dangers we have yet to encounter. By standing together, we improve our chances of facing whatever comes next." The assembly concluded, and as the crew dispersed to their duties, Lyra and Rhodes returned to the observation deck. Below them, the 3 moons of Meridia Prime were rising, casting multicolored light across the planet's silver forests. "Does it ever get easier?" Rhodes asked quietly. Being both Lyra and Aliyah, human, and something more. Lyra considered the question, her luminescence shifting to thoughtful blue patterns. "I don't think of it as being 2 separate people anymore. I'm just me, with memories and experiences that span centuries and species." "And does just you ever miss being just human?" he pressed. She turned to face him, her expression softening. "Sometimes, but then I remember that I never was just human to begin with. I was engineered, created for a purpose." She smiled. "The difference is that now I've chosen my purpose, rather than having it chosen for me." A communication alert sounded, and a holographic display appeared, showing the face of a young Meridian officer. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. They're ready for your report on the quantum drive integration." "Thank you, Ensign. I'll take it in my quarters," Lyra replied. After the display vanished, she turned back to Rhodes. "Duty calls. But join me for dinner later. The Meridian chef has been experimenting with Earth cuisine. The results are interesting." Rhodes smiled. "Wouldn't miss it." As Lyra left the observation deck, Rhodes remained, watching the stars. The universe had suddenly become much larger and stranger than humanity had ever imagined, but also, perhaps, more hopeful. On the bridge of the Harmony, Lyra settled into the command chair, custom designed to accommodate her transformed physiology. Around her, humans and Meridians worked side by side, communicating in a pidgin language that had developed naturally over the past months. "Course laid in." "Admiral," the human navigator reported. "Ready for quantum translation on your command. All systems optimal." added the Meridian engineer. Harmonic resonance stable. Lyra looked at the view screen, where the vast expanse of space waited. Somewhere out there were other species, other worlds, some friendly, some not. The Voidborn had been defeated, but the universe held countless other mysteries and dangers. She wasn't just Admiral Kane of Earth anymore, nor was she simply Alia the Starsinger reborn. She was something new, a bridge between species, between dimensions, between past and future. "Take us out," she ordered. "Let's see what's waiting for us out there." As the Harmony's quantum drives engage, propelling the ship into the depths of space, Lyra felt a profound sense of rightness. This was why she had been born, why Alia had returned, not just to close a rift, but to open a door between worlds. The journey was just beginning. The end.